Welcome to Design Domination, where you'll learn to become a better, more business-savvy designer so you can dominate your competition. Hi, and thanks for tuning in. I'm Colleen Grotzer, and in this episode of Design Domination, I'm talking about when designers should turn down work from a prospect or existing client. Because yes, there are many times when you should do that. Now, I wanted to do an episode about this because this actually just happened to me recently, so I wanted to explain not only what happened, but how I handled it too. Someone that I did design work for, more than 10 or so years ago at a client organization, recently reached out to me about potentially doing work for her again at her new position in this company. And she said that she had always enjoyed working with me and that she liked my work. So she was hoping that I could help her out again. Well, first she asked me if I would consider working with them because it was a business, not a nonprofit, which is who I normally work with. And see, it does happen. Just because you target a particular audience or industry does not mean that clients won't still contact you if they want to work with you. This isn't the first time that's happened either. Okay, but anyway, I said yes, I would consider it because of the nature of their business. Accessibility is important to them. So I talked with her and the CEO about their needs and what issues they'd been having. They needed help with their website. They needed help with SEO. They needed help with marketing materials, designing new ones and having some that they could update themselves. They needed help with social media templates. And as we talked, I found out their website is not in WordPress. I either work in WordPress or do straight HTML. I don't know other platforms. I won't work in other platforms. I don't do SEO, and I'm not interested in learning it, offering it, or managing it, so I refer it out. They wanted their marketing materials designed in a way that they could edit them and still be accessible. Well, I'm not looking to design in Word on a regular basis, and I focus on accessibility work in InDesign. For the social media templates, to allow clients to be able to edit them and then create new ones themselves, I suggested Canva. That wouldn't work for them, though, based on the platform that they use. Maybe it would be workable if I looked into their platform. Maybe it wouldn't be. And at first, before I found out all these details, this sounded like it could be a lot of work that could be a really good fit. But when I found out more details, though, it's like not so much. Now, how I reacted to finding out these details was very different than it would have been several years ago. Back then, I would have said, okay, I'll look into your website platform and see how I can still help you. And I would have been really disappointed. I would have been worried. I would have been wondering how I'm going to figure this out. I'd spend hours doing some research on my own time, not billing them for any of it. And then I would have probably had to send some emails or chat messages with customer support for the platform they use to get some questions answered after doing some research. I would know that this project would take much more time than it usually would because I'd have to spend some time learning as I went. And once I got into the back end of the platform, more things could probably come up, and I wouldn't be confident about how good a job I could do, and I certainly didn't know what I didn't know. I might end up even looking incompetent to the client. And as for the SEO, I would have not very confidently said, okay, yes, I can help with that, and then hired someone I know who does that work. I would have subcontracted and managed the work and taken the responsibility for it as opposed to just referring it out. For their marketing materials and social media templates, I may have said, sure, I'll go ahead and design them in whatever program, even though it was one I'd never used, didn't use all the time, or one that I hated using. It would take a lot longer and present design limitations. And I might also have to do things differently in that program if I was able to do them at all. I would have been trying to make all these adjustments to fit myself into their project. I would not have been profitable because I'd be spending time learning as I went or just spending way too much time doing things by not using the right tools for the job or ones that I wasn't used to using. I would have been miserable working in programs I didn't like or trying to make them do something they couldn't. This is why designers hate working in Word, for example. I would have been kicking myself for taking on the work in the first place because I didn't like it and I knew I wasn't going to make enough money to compensate myself for even just the time that I would spend. I may have felt resentful toward the client. I would surely have been embarrassed if my work wasn't up to my usual standards, too. So that good rapport I had with this client, this might ruin it. Now, how I reacted this time was quite different. I not only said, I work in WordPress and I no longer offer maintenance plans, so I cannot help with maintaining your website. I said it very confidently too. I didn't say it like I was apologetic or disappointed about it. That's key. About the SEO, I said, I don't do SEO, but I know a few experts who specialize in that. That's what you need, and I'd be happy to refer you to them. For their marketing materials, I said, here's how I can help you with that. I work in InDesign, and if you want the PDFs from there to be accessible, you can't just go and edit them later, though, like you were suggesting. So I'd have to make the edits. Or your document is not going to be accessible anymore. For their social media templates, I told them I could create them in Canva, but after they said more about how their social media platform worked, I said, well, I don't think that sounds like it would be a good solution then. At this point, I felt almost like I was talking my way out of any potential work, but that was fine. I wasn't going to go off and do any free research. I wasn't going to risk being unprofitable. I wasn't risking getting a bad testimonial or no referrals. I totally owned what I do and what I don't do, and I was very confident about that, which again is key. I didn't try to be everything to them. I didn't try to make them happy by saying I'd help them with work that I would not be happy doing or that I wouldn't be good at. I knew they'd get better results getting help from people who do that work and work in those platforms, but it wasn't going to be me for that work. I was actually serving them better by saying no to what I did not do or did not do well and telling them to go elsewhere for that type of work. And I didn't feel badly about it at all. I did not see it as a missed opportunity. I saw it as just not a good fit. I remember from my early days of freelancing how embarrassed and upset with myself and resentful toward the client I felt when I took on a project that I shouldn't have taken on. I was asked to design something in Word and it had forms. And I hated working in Word, which I'm sure you can relate to. And I knew nothing about forms either. The client kept asking me to try to do this or that, but I just couldn't seem to give them what they wanted, even after hours of research. I didn't like looking or feeling incompetent either. I was supposed to be the designer. Why was the client having to tell me how to do certain things? Shouldn't I be able to do this? I knew I would not only get no referrals from this client for the work on this project, but I might actually get bad word of mouth. And I remember that feeling, and I don't ever want to feel it again. So my advice to you, when a prospect or existing client contacts you about work, assess the project. Ask yourself, is this work that I'm good at? Is this work I have experience doing? Do I understand what this work entails? It's not only okay to say no, it's okay to say, I don't do that. Or I know someone who does that. Let me give you their contact information. And don't be apologetic about it. You're doing them and yourself a favor by not taking on projects that aren't a good fit. You're not supposed to take on every job that comes your way. You don't have to take on work just because a client asks you to. Change your mindset about saying no. Saying no is not a missed opportunity. It's vital to say no to work that isn't a good fit, because then you have time to take on work that you do well. You won't risk getting a bad testimonial. You won't risk not getting referred to other clients. You won't risk not being profitable. And you won't be seen as a jack of all trades, which can get you more respect. So next time you get approached about a project, think about these things and save yourself a headache and your reputation. If this content was helpful, you can support the podcast by buying me a coffee. It might actually end up being a glass of wine or some tea, but you can go to buymeacoffee.com/creativeboost. And remember to like and subscribe.